Today on the Carrie Campbell Show, I have the pleasure of interviewing Seak Smith, founder of Mom Army, Badass Do-Gooders. And we're going to kick off with her asking you the question, if your life was a movie, would you watch it? Seak, I am so honored to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm so excited to be here.
It is exciting. Okay, so when I introed you, we're just going to dive right in. I love it. You said, if your life was a movie, would you watch it? Let's start there.
Yeah.
Just tell me about that. Tell me why that's your thing. Why that's your one-liner.
Well, my journey has just kind of led me to this line. And what I realize is that, every encounter we have is an opportunity to connect with people. And what I found, at least with my journey, is that I am constantly meeting people with really fascinating backstories that are, stories of triumph, stories of tragedy, but stories of overcomers. And, and I coined them as real life superheroes, which is how Badass Do-Gooders became a thing.
Love it.
Was realizing that, I was just surrounded by people who were just incredible human beings that were, didn't let what happened to them hold them back. And then we're always on a mission to change the world.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So, we met several months ago. I can't remember what month it was now because I lose track of time all the time. And it was just amazing when we first met. We just sat, we just talked, and like one of those conversations where you're just flowing, And I feel like after that conversation, we could probably sit here for 2-3 hours.
Oh,
and you have you are such an amazing, just a human being, but an inspiration, and all the things that you've done and all the things that you've overcome and the stories that you have to tell. I was remembering the stories about your father. I don't even know where to start with them, because that's really and truly like just the bounty of what you have to share today. And so everybody who's listening is going to, get a good dose of inspiration and perhaps even a wake-up call of how they can do life a little bit differently for themselves. So let's talk first about Badass Do-Gooders and Mom Army. What are they? Tell us about them. And I know that that's a big question, but whichever one you want to start with, let's dive in there.
I'll even go back. And my husband helped me figure this out as I was trying to share more of my story. I started a brand with an ex-business partner called Unleash. It was a healing brand. And we did this photo campaign where we extract words that have impacted people throughout their life, negative words and positive words they want to step into. And it was this beautiful photo campaign where we wrote with body paint and body marker on their bare backs. And through that campaign, we did 20 cities across the country. So it was like this photo shoot tour. And I started to meet people who were willing to share some of their stories to a complete stranger like me. And it became this healing process where we help people identify what's been holding them back, what they need to release, and how they can step into exactly who they are meant to be. And we ended up doing this photo shoot. We had a group in Paris take the photo shoot, a group in Sao Paulo, Brazil, do the photo shoot for us. And what I was discovering in that process was meeting people that everybody has a story and everybody has battled something that none of us know anything about. And, learning to give people grace, and learning to be a good listener. And that helped me grow as an individual through that project and that process. And then through that, I was, becoming friends with a lot of people who were part of this project. And essentially that became Badass Do-Gooders. Right. I was meeting all these overcomers and people who were inspiring to me in so many ways. And then part of my journey is that I was a very young mom. I had my first son when I just turned 21. And I really wanted to be intentional about who I surrounded my kids with. Right. I wanted them to be around people who were inspiring, that could be their mentors. So that's just an encapsulation of Badass Do-Gooders. Is like I became, I collect cool friends.
I love it. Collect cool. I love it. So what, for the people who are listening, that's, amazing. But what is it? Like what in a living, breathing form? What is Badass Do-Gooders? Is it a mastermind? Is it a connection group? Is it just a collective? How would you describe it for people
It's all
listening?
of that.
Okay.
But what is uniquely different, I think about Badass Do-Gooders is everyone comes to this group and this collective being givers, being servers and wanting to serve for the greater good, for a bigger cause. And so it's just a natural connection where people, trust this circle of people. Sure. And, we have members all over the country now. Yeah. It started in Los Angeles. Then I moved here to Phoenix, and it has grown here in Phoenix as well. And my goal is to create platforms to give people the ability to share and amplify their voice. Because the more we share stories, the more we can inspire those kinds of changes.
Absolutely.
And so I love creative people coming from LA, being around musicians and actors and producers. A lot of our members are in the creative field,
For sure.
authors, people who are musicians. And so the platforms that we have are speakers platform. We have a speaker series that we, created to elevate people's voices. Festivals. I've done music festivals,
So fun.
to help highlight, musicians who have a lot of good to put out into the world.
I love it.
So anything around film and music and just the creative space is really where I
absolutely love that.
thrive.
So you've touched on something twice, and obviously, helping people tell a story. And I love the whole, tell their story, but I also love, if your life was a movie, would you watch it? I think that there's so much power behind that. And as you were talking through that, I was thinking to myself about the catharsis that a human being has when they have the opportunity to share, and someone holds space for them. I was just talking with my best friend, and who, when my best friend was actually a client of mine years ago, who we became best friends along the way. And one of the things she said to me was, the very first time we got on a call, you're the first person who let me just talk. And I mean, it was a 3-hour call, and she just needed to share and get it out and talk. And so when you talk about people telling their story, sharing what they've gone through, what has your experience been with those people finding their healing, their catharsis, they're finding their voice, like you said, but when you think about it from a catharsis, like a healing standpoint, what have you seen in that?
For me, I'm the oldest of 5 children. And I just remember being super judgmental of my siblings. Why can't you get your life together? I'm the older sister. I was getting the good grades and, doing all the right things, trying to be a good example. And I remember growing up and just being really hard on my siblings and not giving them the space to just grow in the way that makes sense for them, and just holding that space for them. So as I was doing these projects and meeting more people who had gone through all these struggles and and traumas, anything from sexual abuse to trafficking. I mean, I have friends and people who are part of Badass Do-Gooders that have been impacted by so many different, issues that we deal with in a broken world, right? Yeah. And so it has taught me to listen really, really well, to give that space, but also not to judge and not to shame, and I think that there's so much power in that.
Totally.
And it's inspiring for me personally, because I look at people who have gone through horrific things that I have never experienced myself, and realizing people have these supernatural powers that are superhero-like, and I want to celebrate that.
I love that. What a beautiful, I think especially in the world that we're in, it's negativity is usually so much more pronounced in our world on social media, on the news and all that stuff, that it's such what our world needs, is this energy of good, this energy of support. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there doing it. We're never going to have too many people doing that, so I think it's so powerful. So where is Badass Do-Gooders connected to Mom Army? Is that something? Tell me about Mom Army.
Yeah, so Badass Do-Gooders is essentially the umbrella company.
Gotcha.
And then there's a lot of other organizations and then companies that fall under that. Badass Mom Army is essentially the issue that I care deeply about, and it's the exploitation and trafficking of children. And I've been an advocate for children and survivors for 15 years now. And Mom Army became a thing about 3 years ago when I moved here to Phoenix. And it was realizing that I was working with all these amazing women across the country, advocating, for the rights of children and for their protection, but realizing it's kind of a fractured movement and a fractured space that we needed to unify under one voice, that it didn't matter, if we were, in this particular space. For example, there are people fighting this issue on the rescue side and the safe house side and, rehabilitation side. It's such a huge problem that all of us need to come together. And that's what essentially Mom Army became. We launched on Instagram with about 100, what I call warriors for children. Wow. All these amazing women with big platforms. I mean, we have moms in our group that has, 500,000 followers, and they help get that message out of how to activate more people to get involved with how we solve this issue, whether it's bringing awareness, campaigns or policy. We do a lot of policy work in the background. So working with state legislators and working, in California, here in Arizona, as well as Texas. I just got back from Dallas. And I was, at a meeting with an organization called the Yakubunye Ministries, where they rescue and rehabilitate victims and survivors. And so for me, I just want to look at it from a 30,000 standpoint, overview of how do we all lock arms and really solve this huge problem.
Gosh, I remember thinking and feeling this the first time we met. You're such a powerhouse. You are, and you speak so eloquently and so, I want to say just calm, so self-assured and so calmly. And there's just such a air of confidence when you talk about your mission and what you're creating. It's so riveting to me. And I know that no woman becomes a powerhouse without the journey along the way. The hard knocks, the struggles, whether it's ours or someone else around us, where, we're, not really sure which way we're going. Are we turning right, left, going straight forward? Are we calling it quits? Was there a defining moment in your life that was a moment, not when you became this powerhouse, because I have a feeling it was born into you. My instinct is telling me that this is something you were born with. But was there a defining moment where you felt like you transcended into this version of yourself who's going to change the world?
I think it was this constant, I think the universe and God orchestrates all of our encounters. That's me personally. And as I would just be a magnet for people who have gone through horrific traumas, especially when it's in the space of sexual abuse and trafficking. And there was this one particular day where I was just meeting and having conversations back to back to back. It was one of those multiple Zooms on one day. And I always give her credit, but it was a woman named Perla who decided to join our Mom Army group. And, just a quick story. She's this beautiful Latin woman, gorgeous, just has this glow about her through Zoom. She starts to share her story. She wanted an endorsement. She was running for office and we gave her an endorsement. And she started to share her testimony. And it essentially, her son had passed away of a fentanyl overdose. 4 years prior when he was 20 years old, her only son, and so my mom's heart broke into a million pieces, just, talking to this mom. And then within a couple minutes, she paused and she says, a few months before he passed away, he had disclosed that he had been sexually abused by his own father, which I think explains some of the drug issues and things like that. And I remember looking at her and saying, how are you still here? Given all the things that you've had to endure and go through. And, she was strong in her faith and she said, only by the grace of God. And in that moment, I remember hearing that over and over again and hearing how people leaned into their faith, whatever that faith is, their spirituality, their faith, and helping them pull through and navigate and heal from a lot of these, trauma. And I latched onto that and I realized, that's my calling. My calling is to give people like Perla a platform. She ended up speaking at our summit a few months ago, sharing her story. I work with a lot of filmmakers, so we're working on film projects and trying to get more of these stories out, because like you said, we can never have enough of this. Yeah. The more stories we can tell, the better. And and part of the slogan and the phrase, if your life was a movie, would you watch it? These are real life stories that are Hollywood scripts couldn't even write these stories. For
sure, yeah.
Because they're so horrific, but then you look on how they got to the other side of it.
Yeah.
And how they're now living in their purpose and how she's now speaking all over the country about fentanyl OD. She was with, Prince Harry and his wife in New York, working on an initiative to bring more awareness, to change laws at the Capitol. So those are the people that are within the Badass Do-Getters and Mom Army networks. It's just people who have overcome and are doing what they can to impact, change in the biggest ways. Yeah.
So amazing. So I find myself, I'm thinking about what you must navigate day to day because it's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I've been a clinical counselor for 25 years. I've heard it all. I've seen it all. I've navigated a lot. But I don't, on a day-to-day basis, deal with the intensity of everything that you're dealing with all the time. So, and obviously you're a highly, empathic, connected human being. How do you navigate that? For yourself emotionally, on a day-to-day basis when you're hearing these stories and all of these experiences, how do you handle that?
My husband is the one who asks me that all the time. Honestly, I think, an immense daily gratitude practice is something that I share. I am a believer in. If you don't have these daily gratitude practice, you can easily be consumed by all this darkness. And there's stuff that I know that I can't unknow and I can't unlearn or unhear or unsee
Right.
or unfeel, but having a protective heart, protecting your energy, protecting your heart, surrounding yourself with people that are fighters, that are warriors, that can inspire you on a day-to-day basis. That's really what energizes me. And knowing that I've been gifted the ability to help, give people platforms.
Right.
And knowing that that's my calling and my purpose. So it keeps me going every day. But the gratitude practice is probably the most essential of all of it. And then taking time, I think a lot of times people feel like they need to know everything, especially in the social media age where you can doom scroll constantly.
For sure.
I take pauses from that. I was just in Dallas for a family reunion for 5 days and kind of shut social media for the most part. I mean, I checked here and there and just, belly laugh like there was no tomorrow with my cousins and my family. And we hung out by the lake. So you give yourself these moments to reset.
For sure.
Otherwise, you can't continue this kind of work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I completely agree with that. Obviously, from my standpoint as well, being so immersed with people, you have to. I don't know about you, but every now and then, and I always I look at this as when this happens, it's like my driver for the next 5 years. But every now and then, I will get. It's almost like my heart opens up and feels it all. Yeah. And I feel all of the pain, all of the struggle, all of the emotion that all of my clients have felt. And it's like, it opens up, it feels it all. And then it's like, I need to go even bigger. And
time to get to work.
I need to, I go, and then it closes back. My heart doesn't close, but the protection wall, like you say, closes back down. And I'm I always use that as that motivator to go forward. I love the sentence, turn your pain into purpose, and that's a lot of what the people what was her name again?
Perla.
That's what she did, right? She took her pain and turned it into purpose. And that's always an option, right? We always have one of the things that, I always say is the story you tell is the truth, and there's no absolute way something has to happen. You get to choose once you have this in front of you, how you're going to navigate moving that forward. Yeah. So out of curiosity for people who are listening right now, maybe, I'm going to say maybe the likelihood is there's someone out there listening right now who's suffering from either, abuse or, I hate to even think about the fact of, trafficking, but we live in a world where that stuff is really out there. What would you say to someone who is stuck, who is right now living in a world where they don't know how to get out? Yeah. What would you say to them?
I would say that, to hang on to hope and to know that what you are dealing with and going through is not permanent, that there is another side of it. You just have to, believe that there is more for your future. And I think connecting with community is essential. A lot of times people go through things isolated. I love this TED Talk that I share with everybody. It's by a woman named Barbara Sher, and it's called Dreams Die in Isolation. And the more you share, the more you connect, the more you're in community, the more people want to help you. Yeah. And because a lot of times people don't want to burden other people. I hear that a lot. Yeah. And really it isn't. I think people more often than not want to find ways to solve people's problems, help make their dreams come true. And I've seen that over and over again in Badass Do-Gooders. Yeah. Even when people aren't in the position to give, they find a way to give.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. So amazing, so inspiring. Let's shift to Seak the Woman. Let's talk about you, the woman, from obviously all these amazing things that you're doing. So a lot of what I do in my practice is, under the concept of identity, self-identity, who we are, shifting who we were to who we need to become, and elevating. And every time we go and get something, a new level, a new access point, we have to grow into that person, and step into it. So as you've, taken these big, bold leaps and bounds, obviously you've shifted identity, you've become different versions of yourself. So I'm curious to know how identity is played into everything that you've created and done.
I think when you can figure out and get real clarity on your core values, I think start there. And then, where you go in terms of your journey of purpose is all going to unfold and uncover along the way. I didn't always know, but you have to trust your journey because a lot of times you're in training ground, like you're in preparation for the next unlocking of the next level, right? Right. And so, if I go back, in high school, I was I was the one planning all of the ditch days and the social events and the, things like that. And, and then I I was part of an entrepreneur program in my high school. So all the little things that I was doing, and then I eventually landed a job with a fashion college in Los Angeles, where I was the project manager and creative, creative production assistant, and that gave me skills in event planning and PR and marketing. And so I use all of those skills now.
For sure.
But I had no idea back then. But when you can just like settle in to your journey, trust the timing of it, and then, and the beauty of finding your purpose, especially later on in life, because people are always in a rush. Like, I'm 25 and I haven't done this yet. And it's like, I'm about to be 50, and, and it's been, for me, it's been such a beautiful journey to just trust the process and to just, people say, go with the flow. Well, what does that actually mean?
Right. Yeah.
Right. What does it mean to go with the flow? Where I don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
If I set a goal and I miss it, I don't, I'm not hard on myself about it. I understand that there's a time, a season, a reason for everything.
For sure.
And then you watch the magic unfold.
Yeah.
And it's been so magical.
I love so two things. I'm going to come back to core values in 1 second, because I love that you touched on that. And that's a huge topic for me. But I want to actually talk about what you just said about, like, if you set a goal and you miss it, you don't, like, no big deal. Don't sweat the small stuff. I was thinking about this for myself several months ago, because, I mean, this, and especially in business, you have all these plans, and this was the plan, and this is what you're doing, and this is where you're going, this is where you're going. But then you have to pivot because maybe the vision changes, or it gets more refined, or, something shifts. I was reflecting on the fact that I never look back and I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't do, like, we were supposed to, when we kicked off the Carrie Campbell experience, we were planning this big, huge launch party here in Phoenix, that just because of the way things went, we actually decided not to do that. But I didn't spend any time going, oh my gosh, we didn't do that, because I'm always forward thinking. I'm not looking back here. I'm going forward, and I'm creating and moving. So I'm just curious to know if you have any thoughts on that in terms of, like, a forward thinking versus thinking in the past, like where you see yourself, where you see most people, because obviously if you're not beating yourself up over the goal you missed, you're doing something, differently than most people, because most people are.
Yeah. I love that mindset, honestly. And that's what's really helped me grow, because you can sit here and tear apart, right, what went wrong, and, you should have done this, or you could have done that. That's wasted energy.
Right.
It's like worry and anxiety that I just don't, I find a lot of peace in just when I'm given a vision, and I say that I literally will just, like, wake up, and then, like, the other day, it's like tons of visions just came to me. But it is always forward thinking. It is always like, who can I help? For Badass Do-Gooders, it's like, I want the dream of Badass Do-Gooders to be so big that many dreams can fit into it. Right. Like, we're helping people, achieve their dreams within what we're doing. Right. Whether it's film, whether it's publishing a book, we're getting ready, and to your point, it's a lot of pivoting. It's a lot of, I feel like I'm constantly a startup. I'm constantly resetting the button. Yeah. It's like reset. Yeah. But you're refining the vision, and you're and the encounters that you have. I mean, I can share so many examples of how I think this is going to happen a certain way. And then all of a sudden, like, God in the universe is like, nope. Yeah. It's going to go this way. And here's the person, and here's the team. And, and so for me, it's been that, especially of late. I've had to, like, really quiet my mind and just let myself, trust that, okay, it's going to happen in the time that it will. Yeah. So it's been a beautiful journey, just having people come into my life that is like, oh, this piece is going to happen with this person. Yeah.
It's so true. And I think that and obviously there's a lot of practicing in faith in that, mindset practices to be able to get to the place that you can master that. A lot of people have a hard time with that. And I was just, as you said the word pivot, I was thinking to myself about how much words matter. Because recently we made a shift in the Carrie Campbell experience where we were going this way, but then we decided to go this way. And I kept using the word pivot. And then I realized that the word pivot wasn't accurate. We weren't actually pivoting, we were accelerating. And because it was always part of the vision. It was always part of where we were going. And I'm like, because every time I said pivot, I felt like, no, we're not. That's because pivot almost gives the indication that I was going this way. Now I'm going this way, which obviously is what pivot means. But I realized we're not pivoting, we're actually accelerating. Yeah. And I think the power of words matters so much. And the application of a word to a situation, I think that's, and when you go back to the first story you were telling about that photo shoot, and the words, obviously words matter. Like, how do you see words in your world? How much do those have a role insofar as?
A lot, actually, especially, since I started Mom Army, I have my one team. She's kind of my right-hand person, Jess. I love her. And she's very intentional. So we start our meetings with a word. We pick a word.
I love that.
And we always go to the origin of the word, because people, and I've done retreats, I've done healing retreats and things like that. So words do matter, and they are powerful and very important. And I remember a retreat we did a few years ago, and all the women were kept, oh my gosh, this is so weird, and this is so weird. And at first we were like, why do we keep saying that? And we looked up the definition, and the word weird actually has a really fascinating definition.
I love that.
It's about the supernatural. There's something really fascinating, supernatural about, and the word weird is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But we had always put a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
Even like the word cult.
Yeah.
Like, I get accused of like, you guys are a little
you
cult.
and me both. I've been there too. I've been a cult. Every time someone's like, I think you're a cult leader, I'm like, thank you.
I know. I was like, we're the good cult.
Yeah.
Like we don't abuse women and children.
Yeah.
So we'll start there. But the word cult has a really good, origin too. Cult just means the origin of something. Yeah. That's really what it is.
It's so true. It's so true when you say about words. I was talking to someone recently about, the word anxiety and how that's a word that it gets misconstrued all the time. Like, people will be like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious about this party tonight, or I'm so anxious about my trip. And I've actually had to learn, like, do you mean anxious negative, or are you excited? Because I had a client who was speaking in front of, a big group of people. And he was like, I'm really anxious about this. And I'm like, let me ask you a question though. Are you anxious or are you excited?
Yeah.
And he was like, that's a really good question, because people have started to use anxious as really a form of excitement, or I can't wait to get there, or whatever the case may be. And I think we've become so loose with our words.
Yeah.
I tend to be very deliberate with my words, especially as a counselor, but it's so powerful when you think about it, So speaking of words, let's come back to core values, because that seems like a weird connection, but I have 3 words that are my core values for my own my life. I think core values are the umbrella for everything. I personally think that core values are your compass. They're your due north. That if we don't have our core values for ourselves, not our business, because a lot of people have their core values for their company if they're entrepreneurs. But when I ask most people, what are your core values for you, your life, I get blank stares. Or I get like a soliloquy of like a paragraph and somebody going on again. If someone asks me, what are your core values for life? Happiness, impact, mastery. Like that is what I'm in the pursuit of every day. It's the why. It's how I get out of bed on the days that I don't want to get out of bed. So what are your core values? I'd love to know. Like you said, your core values are so important to you. And I love that you know that.
Yeah, it's purpose, it's impact, and it's legacy. Legacy is a big one for me. I have 3 children that, watches me and how I navigate life every day. And it's important to me that we break those cycles, right? Like we only know what we know, right? And, I come from my dad escaped genocide and communism in Cambodia in the 70s. I grew up really poor in South LA in the projects, on welfare, on food stamps, and I always wanted to make sure that, when I started my own family, that I could break these cycles of poverty and cycles of limited beliefs and things like that, and like right away, even though my life didn't start off, propelling in a very positive way to begin with, I had to be intentional, being a pregnant, young mom at 20, not married, my high school sweetheart boyfriend, who is now my husband of 25 years, it's just setting these intentions and making sure that I am constantly living to leave a legacy that my children can be proud of. That's my core value.
So I'm curious, have you ever seen yourself as a victim?
No.
And the reason I asked that question is somebody asked me the other day, I was doing a podcast and we were talking about like people who are really successful and, what's like, have they gone through trauma or whatever? And I said, I don't think that that's the case. Like I didn't go through major trauma, but I have a very resilient mindset. And I think that the one distinguishing factor between people who end up becoming successful and don't are people who see themselves as victims. Yeah. And I say that agree. Because as I was listening to you talk, I mean, just to go back, my father escaped genocide in Cambodia. You lived in LA in the projects, like you've early childhood pregnancy, or not childhood, but early adult pregnancy, you've clearly had to overcome a lot. But if I loop it back to the beginning of the conversation, it's so clear that you've always had a very strong sense of self along the way. you've had reasons you could be a victim, but you've never seen yourself as a victim. Why?
I would say my parents, even though we were like limited in finance and resources, my parents always found a way to support me and uplift anything that I wanted to do. So when I was 12, I was like, I want to be an actress. Kid in the projects, don't even know what that means.
Right.
My mom found a way to send me to acting classes, found the money to do it, get my headshots done. And this is a woman who doesn't speak any English, doesn't know, so my parents, I think if I look back and really have to like understand like my upbringing, they trusted me to trust myself in my decision making. Even at 11 years old, I remember being 11, I was going to school in the projects, and I told myself I didn't want to go to the same middle school all the other neighborhood kids were going to. So I filled out a form and bussed myself out to a school in the Valley, which is like a nicer neighborhood and more upper middle class at 11. And I filled out the form, gave it to my mom, said, can you sign this for me? They had no idea what they were signing. They did it anyway, but they always trusted me. And that gave me the confidence to trust myself.
Gosh, I love that energy.
Yeah.
I love the energy, and I really hope that everybody listening is picking that up. The energy of nothing was going to get in your way. You're clearly focused, driven, and you're on a mission. I mean, obviously with Badass Do-Gooders and Mom Army, but I love hearing stories of that resilience and that determination. It's just so inspiring. That was a beautiful story. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but talk to me, I know I'm giving you this in 2 minutes. So I know for you, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Talk to me about your dad.
My dad. Yeah. I mean, what's so wonderful too, is I recently lost my dad a few months ago, May 1st. And it was really unexpected. It was my dad passed away the day before I was kicking off my 2-day summit and gala for Mom Army. And everybody was like, you should cancel this. And I said, no. One, I have people flying into town. I'm not going to pull the financial rug from underneath them. 2, I really needed to be surrounded by people who love and care about me. And the reason why I share that is because my dad has been my hero my whole entire life. He's this protective dad, my mom would say, would never let a fly land on us, me and my sisters. And so I never was abused. I never, I had to deal with any of the issues that a lot of people in my Mom Army group have had to deal with. And, in his story, it was so inspiring that we started working on a movie for him. We still are, I think I owe it to my dad's legacy to finish the project. So we've been working on the script, working on all the things to just tell his story of, he was like a Harriet Tubman. He rescued other people during his escape from genocide and communism. And I want to honor that for him. And I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the courageous bravery, warrior spirit that my dad has. I used to always say, where did I get this from?
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? Yeah, it doesn't fall far from the tree. Took me a minute,
but yeah.
I love it. It's so beautiful, so powerful. Okay, so let's tell everybody how we can find you. If you want to get involved with Badass Do-Gooders, Mom Army, and just follow you, how does everybody find you? Mostly
on Instagram. So I'm at Seak, SEAK_Smith. And then you can go to all my pages from my bio there. badassdogooders.com. We're in the reset relaunch phase of all of that. We're having our speaker series event coming up on October 9th. And so we do these monthly events here in Phoenix. We're going to be doing them in Los Angeles as well, between the 2 cities. So I just love meeting, incredible people. So if you are a badass and you're doing good, love it. This is where you belong.
I love it. And one day I'll be home for one of the events. Seek keeps sending me all these amazing invites, and I'm somewhere in the world every time I get them. Okay, let's leave on a final note. So everybody out there listening, whether they're male, female, young, old, whatever the case may be, what are the final words that you would leave with them to, go out into the world, do good, be good, elevate themselves? What are your words of wisdom and inspiration to share with us?
I think so often we are conditioned by our environment, our family, our upbringing, to limit, the potential that we have. And I think the world as it is, especially today with all the resources and the technology that is out there, whatever your dream is, dream bigger and go after it. And I promise you, I can make this promise that when you take that first step, all the other steps start to reveal itself. Yeah. Yes. And all the people and all the opportunities. You just have to have the faith in it, and you just have to believe in yourself, obsessively believe in yourself to the point where you're a little delusional.
Yeah. literally,
exactly.
I literally always say that. You're a little delusional. I'm a little delusional. I
Same
love
here.
it. I love
that we finished each other's sentence there.
We both knew exactly where you were going. That was awesome. I love it. Well, I'm inspired.
Same
what
here.
a truly an honor to have you here today. And I'm looking so forward to getting more involved in everything that you're doing as well. Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Remember, nothing changes without action. Listening is the spark, but action is where the fire ignites. If this episode moved you, do what bold women do. Rate it, share it, tag me at the Carrie Campbell _experience, and pass it on to the ones in your life who need this message. Don't keep the inspiration to yourself. And if you're ready to go deeper, come find me at the Carrie Campbell _experience for the women who refuse to be left behind. Join us inside the No Woman Left Behind movement, a community where we rise together, rewrite our stories, and claim the future that's already ours. Hold the vision, trust the process, commit to today. Until next time, let's redefine, reclaim, and rise together.